Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Women Leaders, the podcast that explains global events through discussions with women experts. And welcome to ELN, the European Leadership Network, the home of this podcast. I'm Ilana Beit-El. I'm a Senior Associate Fellow at ELN, and I'm your host for this conversation with women who are leading and shaping the world in many ways and fields. This is Monday, the 15th of June, and on Friday, when this episode drops, apparently the US and Iran will sign something that appears to be like a truce for 60 days. Whether that happens or not, we hope it will. We don't yet know. But what we do know is that this long conflict has very much affected Lebanon and Syria and Israel, of course. To better understand this issue, we have with us Suzan Haidamous, independent journalist and an independent correspondent with The Washington Post, who is a specialist on Lebanon and Syria. Hi, Suzan. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure is ours. Suzan, let us start as we always start. Tell us a bit about yourself and your career.
Okay, so right now I'm a reporter journalist for the Washington Post, but I started as a TV anchor when I was very young. When I graduated, it was by chance actually that I finished my by the way, I'm Lebanese American, so I finished my master's degree in the U.S. and came back to Lebanon for a break. And a friend of mine offered me, why don't you come at the state-run television? They need someone who's to broadcast the news in English. And I'm like, no, this is Lebanon. And in Lebanon, if you know someone, you get the job. If you don't know someone, you don't get the job and all that thing. Anyway, she said, you have nothing to lose. So the next day I went with her. There was an audition. So because I was not desperate to get the job, there were like 10 or 15 people auditioning. And the next day they told me to come over. And I was like, when you're desperate, you don't get it. When you're not desperate, you get it. Anyway, I stayed as an anchor for 5 years at the television. And then I had my son. I got married and I had my son. And I decided that I don't want to spend too much time away from home, but I want to start writing instead of being on television. And at the same time, I was so much eager to be a reporter more than an anchor. I didn't really want to always put my makeup like today and get dressed and be on the screen. I wanted to go on the ground. I wanted to see what's happening everywhere. I wanted to be in touch with the people, in touch with the events. I felt this is more for me as a journalist. It's more exciting and more like the basis of journalism is the reporting.
Absolutely.
Then comes the other. So actually, I started writing once a week for a magazine because I had my son with a babysitter. I don't want to leave him for a long time. To cut it short, then I was approached. The Syrian war started, and I was approached by a very, very dear friend of mine, Liz Sly. I'm sure you've heard of her. And she asked me if I can work with her for the Washington Post as a part timer. And I was like, okay, started as a part time. But there was during that war, there was a lot of demand for people who speak Arabic and English and for journalists who are freelancing. So I was freelancing and working for the Post for I think a couple of years. And then I got a job offer from a big name. And then Liz said, no, Susie, you're staying with us. So I became a full timer with the Washington Post at that time. And the experience was a mix of sorrow and happiness and achievements. And I'm sure you know the feeling as a journalist and as a woman when you accomplish something. When I finish a story, for example, I just don't need to take a drink to go to sleep. I can just go to sleep so peacefully and happy because every time until now, it's been decade, like every time I finish a story or I finish something, it's such a good feeling because you're doing it from your heart and it becomes a part of you. So that's what I.
So you have been with the Washington Post ever since. Just to remind listeners, then the Syrian war breaks out in 2014?
No, 2011, actually.
2011, sorry, that's right, together with the...
Yeah, it's almost 15 years.
wow. You have so many insights, I imagine, into both Lebanon and Syria. What would you say, before we go back, how would you define both of them today, just as a starting point?
Today, Lebanon and Syria, you mean? Okay. As living in Lebanon for some time, and I've witnessed and heard from my parents all the, you know, the feelings, the common feeling in Lebanon is not the same. You don't have like a common feeling. You have wherever you belong, to which sect you belong. If you're a Christian, Maronite, Shia, Sunni, your feelings are different towards Lebanon and Syria. You have, for example, in Lebanon that for example, during the war, the Shia were with the regime. The Lebanese Shia were with the regime. The
Sorry,
Christians were not.
which war are we talking about here? That in itself.
The Syrian war.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's say the Syrian revolution.
Yeah.
So the Shia, and you know that Hezbollah helped the Syrian regime, so they were supported. Christians were mixed, like, no, we're not happy with the Syrians. They've occupied Lebanon. They've not been nice in Lebanon. They were occupiers. We don't like them, so let them handle themselves. And they were like, it's always divided. The Sunnis were not very much with Hezbollah and the Syrians because, the Sunnis prefer a Sunni regime in Syria. So it was like a variety of feelings among the Lebanese. Me as a journalist, I don't know how I was able to put myself in a situation that I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned with the Lebanese, what they think. I'm not concerned with the Syrians, how they feel, how they hate each other, how they fight with each other. That wasn't easy, but because I was in the middle of all this, and I'm a Christian, I'm supposed to be like, in general, not liking the Syrians. To me, I was feeling with the suppression and the what the regime. It was horrible what the regime was doing, and of course feeling with the rebels, feeling with the families and everything. But I tried so hard to keep myself distant. But I didn't succeed when I used to go to the camps, where the refugees were, and see the way they were living. It was horrible. So I had this strong feeling of sadness when I come home. I was feeling sick. I mean, I was feeling not good. So there was a time that I didn't want to go anywhere anymore. But
These are the Syrian refugees in Lebanon.
exactly, yeah, exactly, Syrian refugees in Lebanon. So I couldn't see. I I remember one time, because we used to take some videos. My son was very young. I came home and I told him, "Listen, I want to show you how some people are sleeping and how they are eating." And I showed him a video. I told him you should be thankful and grateful that you have a roof over your head and you have a family and you're still at home. I was feeling with the people, but politically speaking, I was neutral because um, okay, because I did not at that time, and it was very early, I did not see a real leadership in Syria who's going to save them, like a united leadership. They were like factions, and everyone has a different ideology. And so it was, this is why it helped me stay awake, just look from the outside.
Today, just as a snapshot, is Syria for sure, just by default, is in a better place. There's a lot less Syrian refugees in Lebanon, though there are still some.
You mean a better place for Syrians?
Yes.
Okay, the first day the regime fell, I went with my colleague, Loveday Morris. It was like the exact day when we heard the regime fell that we got instruction to go to Syria. So we headed to Syria. We couldn't enter because we arrived late, and the border, the customs in Lebanon closed. We stayed in a hotel. The next morning, we went to Syria. It was shocking. There's a certain space that you have to cross from Lebanon to Syria before you get to the Syrian customs. There was nobody. There were no Syrian customs. There was nobody on the road. There were some buddies dead bodies on the sides of the roads. And it was really, um, I can't say scary as much as confusing. How is it? What is it? What's going on? So we went to a hotel in Batuma, actually, and that somebody recommended, and the owner was originally Lebanese, and it was so uncertain. I mean, everyone you talk to, people you see, people were like in a shock and not knowing what's going to happen, and we were as well. You know, so the good- the positive part was like people started talking. I mean, before I went to Syria during the time of the regime a few times because the regime was not really happy about us being there all the time. So before that, people were scared to talk. You would ask them something, oh, the regime is great, or I don't want to talk, or I don't want to, please don't talk to me. They were scared. The first thing we noticed when we arrived is that people were just waiting for someone to talk to them, to ask them. And when they start talking, they wouldn't stop talking. They would talk and talk and talk. It was like you've been putting them in jail and you open the door.
And what did they want to talk about?
They want to tell us how much they suffered, how brutal was the regime. And most of the people we talked to, they have their children, a husband, a relative, somebody who's in jail, and they're looking for them. Because the first day we went, okay, the second day actually went to Saidnaya prison, and that was like heartbreaking. I mean, every mother, every woman, even men holding photos and looking for the people, for their relatives, for their family members, looking for them because it was chaotic. Like the prison was open and people left, prisoners left, and nobody knows where they are, and you
This
couldn't
is
find them.
just to clarify, this is the famous, rather the infamous, horrendous jail in Damascus or near
Right,
Damascus. Yeah.
right, yeah. It was like the most horrifying and biggest jail. So yeah, reporting there was not healthy. Let's put it this way. I mean, because we had to go inside and see all the cells and see what they left their clothes and how and all this. It was we stayed so long, but that's when I really started feeling more. You know, when I saw what was happening and this barrier that I've placed that I don't want to be part of this. It was you know fading. So yeah, we spent there like 10 days, and during the 10 days, we went to the presidential palaces of Assad and Asmal Assad, and three of them. We talked to a lot of people. People wanted to talk and repeat and repeat, and then we went to the mass graves when they were digging, trying to find. It was to me very heavy, you know. So after 10 days, I came back and I didn't want to go back. So I didn't go back after that. But I covered Syria. I have a lot of contacts there. If the post want me to go, I would go. It's only 2 hours from here, but I'm following up on the ground what's happening.
And Lebanon. You were born in Lebanon?
I was born in Lebanon. My mom is American, and yeah, and I spent my life between Lebanon and the U.S.
Right. So you've also spent your life with the civil war, with the wars with Israel, with the wars with Syria. You've lived it all.
Yeah. Well, the Civil War, I was not. I was really young. I mean, the 2006 war, yes. And of course, my parents told me about the Civil War, and I was growing up with the outcomes of the Civil War, because the Civil War ended, but always it was always chaotic. It was always not unstable. Let's put it this way. Yeah, it was unstable most of the time.
And has this war currently been worse than the previous ones, do you think? Or is it just yet another one?
Worse. It's worse. Worse because to start with, in 2019, the economy collapsed and the currency collapsed and everything. So people are not well off as they were before, and they don't have too many choices. And still, the economy is very bad. Things are very expensive. Besides, uh, Hezbollah was ready in a way. that they already have their logistic teams that they would, for example, displace people. They would put placed in apartments and places, everything arranged. They were relatively okay. I mean, they were not like this recent war. They were sleeping on the street. They were sleeping on the highways. No one looked after them. Even now, they are in schools, and then the schools want to resume, their lessons, and there now it's worse for the Shia people.
Yes. So just to understand, what you're talking about is that the Shia people and the Hezbollah supporters have nowhere to go, or they're in just if you can elaborate a bit.
Yeah. Uh, Actually, before the pagers, because it looks like, and we discovered later that everyone who had the pagers, I'll explain about the pagers if you want. They were logistics. Like there were doctors, there were teachers, so they were in charge of the logistics. And they would help the people, give them money, give them food, put them in shelters and everything. Around 2,000 or 3,000 of them were inflicted by the pagers operation. So that's when the whole everyone was lost. No one can help. They try. I mean, there are some people who try, and the Lebanese government is unable to handle all this because the government is already has a lot. It's not the war that the government started. If the government started the war or there was an attack on the government, this is something. And the war started by a group of militants, armed men. This is a different thing because Hezbollah, although he has a majority of Shia support, but after all, um, they are a government inside the government. You know what I mean? They are a state. Let's put it this way: a state inside a state. They have their own hospital. They have their own education. They have their own mini state. They're not a part of. Okay, they are a part of the government that they have ministers and they have members of parliament, but their priority is their own people and their own area. Basically, Dahi is the southern suburbs of Beirut, which they call it Dahi, and in South Lebanon. That's their strongholds. And the people support them in general, not everyone, of course. So because of the hit they got from Israel in 24 and because of the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, so they were lost. They were lost and they were, in a really bad shape.
Let me just explain to our listeners who aren't always up on exactly all the details. In 2024, the Beeper event that you're referring to was by the Mossad in Israel, that it, because Hezbollah had provided all of its operatives with beepers rather than use phones because they were afraid that their phones would be tapped. It was the beepers that were tapped, and I think 1,000 went off at the same time. I don't know exactly. We'll put it in the note, sort of how many. And then in the following year, so those were the people who were affected by the beeper event 2 years ago. And then June last year, exactly a year ago, Israel attacked Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and took out Hassan Nasrallah, amongst others.
Right.
The
right.
leader of Hezbollah. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And the pagers operation was really a shock for everyone because it was well organized, well prepared. I don't know how the idea came. I really don't know, but I know that it was like a big shock. Let's put it a big hit for Hezbollah. Let's put it this way. So, and here I want to tell you a story that happened to us, me and another colleague, Susanna George, with the Post. So it's the first operation was the pagers, but a week later there was another operation, which is, the walkie-talkie.
Mm-hmm.
So the first operation, they started having funerals. So Susanna and I went to a funeral in the southern suburbs, and we were with the huge crowds. And the funeral was for a group funeral actually, and there was a big bomb I remember I just screamed for the first time. Although I've heard a lot of bombing, I screamed, and it was like few meters away. The first talkie-walkie that blew up, and so they started. Everyone was like, "Turn off your phones!" Pushing us everywhere. No phones. They were afraid that the phones would blow up as well. It was the most panicking period of time that I've passed through. So I turned my phone off, but our security were like calling us, and the driver and everyone, but we turned the phones off. We were locked in close to the walls, and no one could move for like 20 to 30 minutes. And then Susanna and I started sneaking from the back side to get out of. But it was horrifying. And that's when most of the people who were with the walkie-talkie, it was blowing. So everyone was taking the battery out. And yeah, that was the second hit for Hezbollah. And the third one was assassination of Hassan Nasrallah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was the effect on Lebanon of those? Because, as you say, Lebanon is a very divided country. Presumably, in the Shia community, we know, there was huge disarray. But what about the other communities? How did they react both to the Beeper event and to the elimination of Nasrallah?
Okay, my community where I live in, community I belong to, of course they were satisfied that Hezbollah is getting weak. People would not say like, very few people would be like, "Oh, we're happy they got this." I mean, at least if they feel it, they won't say it. Let's put it this way. But they were like okay with it because they were fed up with Hezbollah controlling the country and imposing Iranian policy on Lebanon. People in my community were fed up with this. Until now, they are. But on the human side, they were not like happy. Oh, we are happy that they wouldn't express that, you know. But they were okay with it. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then came this war that started in the 28th of February. And what happened then?
Yeah, on the 2nd of March. Yeah, on the 2nd of March, Hezbollah started. Okay, Israel assassination of Ayatollah.
In Iran.
So, yeah, in Iran. So Hezbollah decided to, in revenge of this assassination, they fired 6 or 7 rockets on Israel. So people, I know some people that I talked to during my reporting, when they heard that Hezbollah is firing these missiles, they just left Dahi. They knew that Israel is going to retaliate. So it started there. I mean, they started the war. They started after October 7th, October 8th, they called it the support front. And they started this one. I mean, their excuse was, or their explanation was that they knew Israel was going to attack them, so they attacked first. So what did you do? I mean, it wasn't. I don't want to put a blame on any side, but I'm just putting the facts. The fact is that they have started firing at Israel, and they gave Israel the excuse. There's a saying: you don't push a cat to the corner because the cat will scratch you. So, yeah.
But the scratches are very big this time.
Yeah. It's really big. Even until now, the southern suburbs is destroyed like 80% near here in Beirut, and the south, they are just sweeping the houses. I mean, there are houses and villages. The homes are just flat on the ground. Lebanon is going to suffer because where are these people, the displaced, going to go? They don't have homes. I mean, today I was talking to one of the mayors in Sur, in Tyre, South Lebanon. And I asked him, did the people displaced start coming back home because of the announced ceasefire? He said they don't have homes to come to. Some of them are coming just to check on their homes. So we are going to face a very, very big, huge social and economic and whatever livelihood problems in the future, even if the war stops. Even if the ceasefire holds on, we're gonna face, where are these people? Who's gonna build the South? Who's gonna build their homes? How can they prove that this is my home and this is my land? They left in a hurry, and probably some of them don't even have papers to prove that they own this land. It's very dark. Let's put it this way.
And this is majority Shia, or is it also Sunni and Christian?
No, majority Shia, unfortunately. Although they are Lebanese, and the Lebanese people should at least be with each other, but the problem is the affiliation. When Hezbollah is openly saying that we are with Iran and Iran is our ally and all this, then you can't say anything. You can just sit and watch.
So what is the position really? I mean, what we know at this point is that Israel and Lebanon are meant to be included in this ceasefire, but neither of them is a signatory to it or have been negotiated to it. This has been going on, if we're clear and honest, then between Hezbollah and Israel, at least since 2006, if not before. How does it end? What happens?
Well, actually, right now, if we start in 2006, Hezbollah kidnapped at the border, kidnapped Israeli soldiers, and that's when Israel started 33 days of bombing and war. It ended up with a compromise, not a compromise, ended up with a UN Security Council 1701, which states it states that south of the Litani River in South Lebanon should be free of any militias, Palestinians, Lebanese, and the Lebanese army should be deployed there, and Israel would stop its attacks. That was the agreement. Of course, there were other articles and items in the UN Security resolution, but the main that no militias in Lebanon should have arms. That was the headline. All militias, other Christian and other militias, they gave up their arms. Hezbollah was the only militia that didn't give up its arms because under the pretext of Israel is still occupying Sheba farms, and we have to keep our arms to resist Israel because the Lebanese army is not strong enough to face Israel. So they stayed. But it was calm. It was calm. It was, okay, they started reinforcing themselves internally inside Lebanon, like in the government, in the parliament, in the ministries, institutions. They started, getting in there. And they became, there was a time they became, like they had the majority in parliament and the majority in the government. I mean, with allies, of course, with Amal movement, another Shia faction, and some of the other allies. So there was a time they were controlling the country, really controlling the country. And then Nasrallah, the Secretary General, had a certain charisma, so he was collecting more supporters and more supporters.
Secretary General Nasrallah of Hezbollah.
Yeah, he's the Secretary General of Hezbollah. So with his charisma, he was able to give a lot of moral support to the people, and we are going, we can stand against Israel and all. So they really lived it, and they were preparing. They were digging tunnels. They were getting arms. They were until the point that when October 7th started, when it happened, and not started, sorry, it was like a bad thing that happened. I remember when I saw what was happening, I was thinking, oh my God, what is Israel gonna do? And it proved to be, yeah. And it's normal. I mean, when you when you start something, you have to, I'm not justifying. When you start something, you have to make calculations. So, so then on October 7th, it started. On October 8th, Hezbollah joined, and they decided that they want to make a united front, like all the Arab countries and all the they call them axis of resistance,
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to join. Why do we have to join in Lebanon?
Mm-hmm.
Why? There's a government here. If the government wants to join, they will join. If you want to join on your own, you can do it, and that's what they did. But what happened is the whole Lebanon was devastated. They started. Then there was a ceasefire, and a ceasefire never sustained because Israel wanted to finish up Hezbollah, and the Lebanese government could not. I mean, the Lebanese army cannot go inside Hezbollah areas and fight with them, and they don't have the necessary weapons and equipments, and they don't want to have a clash because there are some army members or brothers or cousins are members of Hezbollah. So it's not easy for the Lebanese army to clash with Hezbollah, and Hezbollah has better missiles and better weapons than the army at a certain point. But the Lebanese government did something to a certain extent that the borders were sealed. I mean, Syria, they couldn't get arms from Syria. The airport flights from Iran were banned. And but Hezbollah started concentrating on drones. So they started getting the pieces of drones, and they're making the drones in Lebanon, and started using the drones against Israel. And that was when Khamenei was killed. So they sent some missiles, and it started again. So yeah, I don't want anyone hearing me to think that I'm taking sides. I'm just putting facts. So the facts are, when you start a war, you should expect a war.
Yeah. And what do the Lebanese, and of course the Lebanese government, think of the insistence of Iran in keeping its influence in Lebanon, and mainly, of course, maintaining Hezbollah? Is that a popular position?
Yes, the Lebanese government recently was very clear that they want Hezbollah to give up their arms, and they even started peace talks with Israel in Washington. And there were two sessions, and there's a third session coming. Of course, it's opposed by Hezbollah because they believe that, and even Sheikh Nabi, on behalf of Hezbollah, they said, let Israel pull out of the south and we'll sit down and talk with the Israelis. While the Lebanese government has started talks with Israel. So we're going to face also in the coming days, we're going to face another ordeal when it comes to this situation.
I'm sure that's the case. It is this very odd situation, but actually we're living through historic times because Iran needs to keep Lebanon, and of course through Hezbollah, in order to keep its regional ring of fire. It's lost it in Syria. If it loses Lebanon, then it loses a huge amount of capability. And do the people in Lebanon, again, I know it's divided. You can't talk about the people in Lebanon because each group has its own. But the overall sense after all these years of war is independence, or let's stick with Iran, or what is the overwhelming sense?
Okay. Also, I have to go back to the sectarian affiliation because, of course, supporters of Hezbollah, I'm not talking about the old Shia. I have a lot of Shia friends, educated. I love them. They're very close to me and they're rational. I'm talking about the supporters, the members and supporters of Hezbollah, and the supporters are a majority of the Shia. Of course, they want to stay with Iran. They say, they even declared today, Iran has been faithful to us. Because Iran was pushing the past 24 hours or 48 hours, was pushing that it will not go into the deal, Trump's deal, unless Lebanon is included and there's a ceasefire in Lebanon. So now they're happy and they're arguing. You see, Iran didn't leave us. Americans always leave their allies. Iran didn't leave us. This is their argument. The other argument on the other side, who are against Iran, let's put it this way. I don't want to say Christians or Sunnis. I'm saying those who are against Iran, they're not they're not expecting anything positive in the future. And of course, they want to get rid of Iran's influence in Lebanon. And the only way they feel that they can do this is through a peace treaty or a certain understanding or something with Israel, normalization maybe, but under U.S. control, under U.S. sponsorship, actually.
Very, very interesting. About a year and a half ago, we had a wonderful conversation between an American Lebanese woman who preferred to, at that time, remain anonymous, and a very prominent Israeli center-left writer and historian. And they were saying very much the same, both of them, that, sort of, we need to normalize. We need to normalize because it's the only way. And basically, between the peoples of Lebanon and the peoples of Israel was what I took away from the conversation, notwithstanding the wars, which were mostly to do with Hezbollah. There's no great animosity between the people,
Exactly.
Sort of. So it's interesting that this perspective doesn't often get out in one way or another. But what is the position of Syria now? It doesn't talk to Iran, or does it? It's not. And what is the Lebanese-Syrian relationship also?
Okay, so if I want to explain the Syrian situation now, Syria, the, Sy- the Syrians, they don't like the Iranians. I mean, the majority of the Sunni Syrians, of course, they're against Iran, and they're against, especially after the war. Iran was helping the Syrian regime, and of course they were against Iran. At the same time, I think they don't speak a lot about it because they have an issue of not taking the side of Israel. Ideologically, they cannot be with Israel, but they don't want Iran. Iran is a Shia, Israel are Jews. So most probably they don't like Iranians, but they're not very open about talking about normalization or with Israel. That's my impression of the people that I've talked to.
What's the relationship between Lebanon and Syria now?
It's normal. The government is connecting with the new Syrian leadership, and it's like it's sort of normal because Lebanon is handling its own issues in Syria. There's not too much interference. There are still cases between the two countries. For example, there were Lebanese missing prisoners in Syrian jails that they couldn't find anybody. There are some, you know, irritation between on the border line between villages, that there are Shia villages and and Lebanese villages. Some irritation, but in general, the two countries have reached a point that they respect each other's boundaries and they're on the right track.
And are there still a lot of refugees, Syrian refugees in Lebanon, or have most left?
There are still not as much as before, but most of them don't want to go back to Syria because they don't have jobs in Syria. They're here. Although it was the UNHCR limited its help and everything, but some of them found some jobs that the Lebanese don't take. But I know there are still a lot. There are still a lot of Syria in Syria. Not all of them went back to Syria. And Syria is not rebuilt again. Many of them they don't have even still Syria was not rebuilt. Yeah.
Suzanne, as we move towards the end of this podcast, there's so much destruction in the Middle East right now. That is my main reflection. You look at it from Gaza, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran. What happens now? Is there a new horizon somewhere, or is just everybody going to carry on bombing everybody else?
I don't think there's any horizon. I don't think there is any clear image of what's going to happen, because you never know. There are so many parties involved that you never know how the alliances work, how the interests between the countries work. For example, now the Gulf countries don't want war with against Iran because their interest is not in war, although they've been enemies with Iran to a extent. So you never know how the players play and where their interests lie, you know? So I'm not very optimistic, but we have to keep going.
We always have to keep going. What would make Lebanon work?
Oh, what would make Lebanon work? That Hezbollah become a political party, not a military party, and all the parties compete democratically and accept each other, and stop being allies with foreign countries over your country. That would probably, it's a miracle, but probably that's the only way.
Yeah, I
But
can say
let me
that.
tell you something before we end. Lebanon always survives all this. I don't understand how, but it keeps surviving. It's surviving. I really don't understand how it keeps going on. It's been for decades, but that's the situation, actually.
It is a situation. It's very, very interesting to observe it both from afar and from up close, which is what I tend to do because it's so counterintuitive. I think the Middle East is the most counterintuitive area that I know because whilst other areas do wars, it's still quite rich. It is, in fact, prosperous in very many ways. It carries on functioning. If I've seen an evolution in my lifetime, it's Israel is now a prominent player in the region, whereas before everyone
Right.
just assumed it would disappear or I don't know what would happen. So if those sort of changes are possible, though there's one country we haven't talked about, and that's Jordan, or mentioned,
Right.
seems to sit between everybody and hope it'll all go away kind of thing.
Yeah, right. No,
Um,
that's true.
but nonetheless, it is a fascinating, difficult, counterintuitive, rich region. But right now we're seeing politics and we're seeing the fight for who's going to control it. And who do you think in the end will control it?
That's a tough question. It's a tough question, actually. I think no one will control. I mean, there will always be conflict. It's been for, I think, over 2,000 years now. And I don't see any spot of light, any ray of hope. It's going to stay. It's like a conflict of ideology, a conflict of belief, a conflict of, you know what I mean? It's not, you're competing with the way people are thinking. This is the conflict.
Yes.
So,
It's a man's conflict. Somebody's always got to be the strongest, sort of. They do compromises. But here's hoping maybe if they listen to us, they'll find out that there is another way.
right. That's right.
That would be absolutely great. That was a wonderful episode, wonderful discussion. Thank you so much, so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And I really appreciate all your questions. And I was feeling talking to friends at home.
It's a wonderful thing to say. Thank you. Thank you so much to Suzan Haidamous. That was a wonderful episode. Keep listening to our conversations and support us with a subscription on your podcast platform. Leave us a 5-star on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and of course, add to the conversation with your comments. In addition, help support our podcast and spread the happy word of this episode to friends, colleagues, family, enemies, and anyone you think would like it. We're on all media, so reach out on Instagram as @women_leaders_podcast and on ELN, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. All information and links mentioned in the episode can be found in the notes. I'm Ilana Bet-El, together with my friend and producer, Florence Ferrando, and we'll be back very soon with another great conversation.